Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Well, the Utah Jazz did it. Just about the time you mentally adjusted yourself to losing is good, they went out and won a game. They beat the Wizards. The Jazz now have the second worst record in the NBA. Wizards on 15 wins, the Jazz on 16. Now, they did split home and home 2 weeks ago. The Wizards won in Washington, so I guess there is that. I thought maybe the Wizards, 9-11 in the last 20 games, while the Jazz lost 10 in a row. Maybe the Wizards just weren't that bad anymore. And yet, there you go. So it happens. We're not going to dwell a lot on that this morning because it is the morning of the NCAA tournament. Some of you are cramming to finish your brackets. Others are curious how your Aggies or your Cougars are going to do playing later today. So we're going to spend this hour focused on the NCAA tournament. We'll start with a big look, help you fill out your brackets. And we begin with Rocco Miller. Now, Rocco is an interesting interview. That guy, he is all in on college hoops. He's got multiple jobs. He's got, this time of year, it's all about the brackets. In the summer, he's scheduling games. He'll tell you all about it. Here's Rocco on 97.5 The Zone. Rocco, good morning.
Good morning. How are we doing today?
I'm doing well. Rocco, I got to ask you, because I've always wondered about, people like you and Joe Lunardi and people who build their life around college hoops. What do you do the rest of the year?
Well, I actually work on scheduling for all 31 conferences, more of a consultant for the leagues to try to give teams opportunities that otherwise might not get them, whether it's through different events or just playing each other home and home. A good example last year, we got VCU in New Mexico to play a home and home series that I think really helped both teams. Now, unfortunately, I don't think VCU was getting in unless they won the Atlantic 10 tournament yesterday, but, just trying to manufacture those opportunities. The world of, non-power conference basketball has become increasingly almost impossible to get in that large bid, as we saw yesterday, if you're in that situation. But we try to create as many angles as we can for those teams to prove themselves. There's a lot of talent across all levels of college basketball, and so it's a great opportunity for me as well to keep up with the portal. Scheduling has a lot to do with what happens in the transfer portal in terms of which teams will play each other, which teams won't play each other. So it's a constant re-education on which players are going where. And then before we know it, it's October and we're getting ready for the season to start.
I love an entrepreneur. I love finding a niche. Good work, Rocco. I'm impressed. And I think on behalf of everyone listening, anything you can do to get Utah, BYU, or Utah State an intriguing home and home, because we see very little of those. Anything you can do, including getting them to play each other, we all welcome. We're all pulling for you, Rocco.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with where you guys are coming from. And, a lot of teams understand the data doesn't favor them when they come to the altitude, and that really hurts. But if we can get games in Vegas or whatever we got to do, we'll take that over nothing.
Yep.
But I totally understand. You have unbelievably passionate fans in the state of Utah, well-supported programs, that's pretty clear, and an exciting future, I think, for the youth. So, a lot to look forward to, but it is brutal when trying to get a team to agree to come up there nowadays.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, Bracketeer.com, let's keep the main thing as I get distracted, as I often do. The brackets come out. Is there anybody that you saw right away and you thought wildly overseeded, wildly underseeded, or what the heck is North Carolina doing in this tournament?
Yeah, I think the big one for me was actually Texas. Even for me, they were launched into the sun before the SEC tournament started even. I thought they needed 4 wins just to be relevant. Everything that the committee had taught us over the last 5 years since the net was introduced. So it's been 6 years, but we didn't get a bracket in 2020. So we've only seen 5 brackets until yesterday. And one of the general rules of thumb, and I've talked to committee members about this, so this is not something that just makes logical sense, but it checks that box too, is that when you take away the quad 4 results, what's your record? Just what's your record without quad 4? And if it's anything below 500, you should be at extreme risk. That's basically telling the committee you had a bad season, you had a losing season, you had tons of opportunities, you didn't win enough games, and that basically tips the scales, like too much water in the boat. Well, Texas went 12-15. I mean, they shouldn't even have been close to being considered. And I get that they beat SEC teams and they got a couple of good wins in Nashville, one of those against Texas A&M, who will be a number 4 seed. But throughout the year, and the other element of the Longhorns is the fact that any 15-loss team to ever get in, I think they're only the 5th team to do it of all time. The other 4 examples have extraordinary highlights on their resume. So like that Colin Sexton team from Alabama around 2019, 2018 timeframe, there's a Vanderbilt team in there as well. They both beat multiple 1 seeds. This Texas team did not come close to that, not even sniffing that. Their best win was maybe that Texas A&M win. Their best road win was Mississippi State, which is still a good road win. I'm not knocking that. What I'm saying is it's not extraordinary. They had chances. In the SEC this year, you had 2 1 seeds, 2 2 seeds, you had a 3 seed, you had a 4 seed, you had multiple 6 seeds. They didn't beat any of those teams, not even once, except for A&M at the very end. And so, to me, it was a pretty easy decision to not. They shouldn't even have been in the first 4 out, based on the process that I've studied, that I've been trained on, that committee members have told me from prior years. So Texas to me was absolutely egregious. North Carolina is, of course, getting all the hype for good reason. I just thought when Colorado State took them out in West Bend, they were the very easy team to dismiss because there was other good options for teams that had wins over the field, whether it was Indiana, even though they had limited wins. They had the big one at Michigan State. They had a Purdue home win, and they didn't lose anything outside of Quad 1. They won. You can't look at North Carolina and Indiana side by side and not take the Hoosiers in my view. Also, the West Virginia thing I'm actually not as upset about because the committee's talked about this before, how they might, whether it's fair or not, but just judging a team based on what they're bringing to the tournament. The DeVries injury happened forever ago, but they didn't play that well without him, and I had a feeling they might leave him out. They were projected in my first 4 to Dayton. I had a feeling they might slip out, so I wasn't as angry as probably the general public on that one. But with Carolina, just based on the fact that Colorado State took that last bid, I just didn't think there was any more room for them, and there was really nobody in the field that I could replace with North Carolina. And it ended up being Indiana, but I think Indiana's got a strong case against North Carolina in this example.
Everybody brings a bias to this, and mine is I grew up in San Diego rooting for the underdog, literally teams that moved away to L.A., so you know how we feel about big markets. And I went to UC Santa Barbara, a big West school, so I've rooted for the little guy forever. I've never been Yankee, Cowboy, Laker guy. And so I bring that to college sports, and that is my bias. But nonetheless, at the end of the year, when you tell me that North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Texas, these last couple of weeks are really on the bubble and they could miss, and Drake and Boise State and UC Irvine might get in, guess what I would bet on? I mean, I'm not a gambler, but guess what I bet on?
Right.
I bet on the big brands, and all 3 of them got in. And unless they're all assigned like a letter code, Team A, Team B, Team C, once you introduce the power of the brand, I mean, I'm sure the committee chair left the room when they talked about North Carolina. They play by the rules. But you're hanging out, you're on a committee with him, you develop some type of relationship, friendship. Do you really want to tell him no when he walks back in a room? No. I always thought it was going to break this way. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. And I was right there with you 2 mornings ago. So the morning they lost to Duke, I had North Carolina in. And I'm kicking myself a little bit. I should not have touched that. I'm just not going from 1-11 to 1-12. You have to look at it again after they play again. It's just, winning 8% of the time against your best part of the schedule. I think the math of that just got to me like, okay, we're going to come to our senses now and realize there's no way we can put this team in. And that was foolish by me. You're 100% right. They had enough things they could point at to keep them in or put them in, whichever order it went in the room there. And you're 100% right about the committee dynamics. I'm on multiple mock committees throughout each season. We just did ours the weekend before, our big one. And it's the same. Like by the end of the weekend, you've spent well over – I mean, these sessions are long, 4, 6, 8-hour sessions, and then you go grab dinner together. You go, to hang out together during breaks, and you kind of just chat teams. Hey, what were you thinking when this team came up? And you're doing that stuff on the side. So there's a whole committee dynamic that, it's either unconscious, subconscious, or conscious that you know what you're doing when it's time to really make that final vote. And it's just it's something you can't really prove. He does have to leave the room, but there's a dynamic to it. That's a conflict of interest. And then obviously seeing that you can get financially compensated additional for bonuses for teams getting in or out. It's a pretty big issue, and I get it. If it's just a business and that's all this is now, and if the NCAA loses whatever it is, hundreds of millions of dollars if North Carolina's not in, then I get it. But just say that.
We're joined right now by Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.com. All right, what people really want to know is their team going to win. BYU got a 6 seed. I'm curious if you think that is the right seed for them, and what odds do they have? You already mentioned VCU. What odds do they have of beating Virginia Commonwealth?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting matchup. I don't mind the seed. I had BYU as my last number 5, but it was really close. They entered the day as the top 6. I did a deeper breakdown and ended up moving them to a 5. Another example where I probably should have just left them where I had them to start yesterday. But at the end of the day, I think it's a fair seed based on there were still a couple of the records that weren't up to 500. I think in quad 1, maybe one game under 500. So when you're trying to break into the 5s and the 4s, there's some really big time resumes you're competing against. But VCU, they've been an electric team, a very veteran team. You guys are familiar with a lot of the guys. They used to play for Utah State, Max Scholga. Odom's staff is very similar to when he was at Utah State. I'm still friends with them over at VCU. So I think it'll be a really good game because VCU likes to get up and down. They find open shooters on the floor. BYU has been so tremendous offensively. I think we could get a wide open game and a lot of points. I think it just comes down to who can get stops down the end. The traditional basketball things, but it's going to play like a fast game. I think it'll be one of the best games, I think, in the first round, barring somebody going cold.
Utah State is a 10 seed, so let's just ask the same questions. Did they get the right seed, and what shot do they have against 7th seeded UCLA?
Yeah, I think they did, right where I had them. UCLA, yeah, it's interesting. UCLA's been on the road all year, and now they're sending these guys to Lexington. I think that's Utah State's best advantage is that, UCLA just had to go to Indianapolis for their conference tournament. They showed up there. They got killed. And I don't know, maybe that's a good thing for UCLA because they didn't have to stay there very long. They could get back to LA after that opening loss to Wisconsin. I think overall, it's a Mick Cronin team, so they're going to rebound really well. They're going to defend really well. And Utah State didn't play their best basketball in the last month. So, and we'll see, hopefully Carson Templin's okay. I saw him shaking up a little bit at the end of the Colorado State loss. But overall, I think if UCLA it comes down to them, really. Obviously, they're superior on a talent point of view. I love Ian Martinez, Mason Falslev, Drake Allen, those guys. But when you're going up against Kobe Johnson's probably the best individual defender maybe in the entire Big Ten. He certainly was in the Pac-12 last year. Then you have talented guys like Sky Clark, Dylan Andrews, the bigs in the middle. It's a tough physical matchup if UCLA is locked in. But you might catch UCLA at the end of an exhausting season where they're on their 6th trip to the East, which is, of course, unprecedented. And maybe they're ready. Maybe they're ready to just kind of move on with the off season. We'll see. That happens more than you think nowadays with the portal, with these super conferences, with coast to coast leagues. So maybe that's the angle for Utah State. But I think if Utah State clicks, they're a good team to watch. They can play together. They have a lot of guys playing for the last time. Seniors. So I think it's interesting, and hopefully for the Aggies' sake, they can hang around and make it a game with 10 minutes to go.
I have a hard time corralling my inner college basketball nerd. Many people know that, including my co-host, who fortunately is on vacation right now because he'd be busting my chops, rightly so, over this. But I've loved college basketball forever, going back to, being in junior high. It just the tournament completely captured my imagination. And given the fact that you schedule teams in the off season, you seem to have quite a bit of history. So the thing I think about Utah State, UCLA starts with when Stu Morrill is here 20 years ago dominating. That is the first time the Utah State BYU rivalry broke down and they didn't play. And some of that was personalities, but some of that was coaches didn't like playing as matchup zone early in the season because they hadn't had time to practice and prepare for it. They didn't want to take the loss. They didn't want to go up there in a hostile environment. And that was, I think, part of the equation. Now you fast forward here, okay, there's 17 coaches in the last 18 years have gone through. It's just nonstop. But guess what? They land on a coach who uses a matchup zone. They dominate early in the year. when they stop dominating, I asked someone who I think is wired into the program, are people catching up with the matchup zone? Because I'm thinking back to the Stu Morrill days. And they're like, no, it's just a bad game. So now we have on Scott Jerrod, the radio voice of the Aggies, who I do think is plugged in. And he went to Utah State. He knows the whole history of the program. And I just asked him a couple segments ago, what about Utah State and UCLA? And he says the advantage talking to people is nobody in the Big Ten plays this matchup zone. UCLA hasn't seen it. CSU saw it, and they won big the second and third time because they adapted to it. Boise won big the second time because they adapted to it. UCLA, you can watch it on film, but it's not the same thing. How big an advantage do you think this matchup zone is, given the stuff I've heard over the last 25 years and what you hear from coaches when you try to schedule games in the summer?
Yeah, it's a great point. I would have to go back and watch some of their non-conference film, but I'm looking at the teams UCLA played, and that's probably true. New Mexico is the only Mountain West team they played. That was earlier in the year, and they don't mix a lot of zone in, especially not a matchup zone. So, yeah, I think that's certainly an angle. That's why and I'm like you, since as long as I can remember watching these games, probably when I was little. When I was 7, the Final Four came to Seattle in 1989. And it's been and I remember that. So it's been off to the races since '89 in my life. But yeah, I think that's a good angle. I believe, obviously you want to get away with adjustments are always in order. It's a TV timeout to TV timeout sport, and the best coaches like Jerrod Calhoun's a heck of a coach. Obviously Cronin is a heck of a coach. Adjustments are always coming throughout a game, and that's one of my favorite parts of why I go to so many games across so many leagues, is because I want to see how these guys adjust and how they strategize, because other coaches aren't as in tune with what's going on out there, and that can separate a team being successful or not. But these two are very strong coaching staffs. So I would imagine UCLA maybe catches them off guard early. Could be a good first half, and then we'll see how the counter punches go from there. It is going to be not only this matchup, but we'll have a lot of matchups like this where it's going to be a chess match for the first 25 minutes or so, and then it's all about who adjusts and who makes the right tweaks to go out and finish the game off.
Rocco, it's been great talking to you. We appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on and talking hoops with people, and thanks in advance for whatever you can do to line up good home games. And everybody here likes going to Vegas. I've seen all three of these fan bases travel to Vegas big time, so they can say they don't want to go to Vegas, but they do. They absolutely want to go to Vegas. And some people they won't even deny it. They'll just race you down there. So anything you can do would be awesome.
Oh, that's right. And we have a bunch of new arenas going up there, and there's already a bunch now. So it's a college basketball hotbed. I was there all last week for the tournament. So it's not slowing down. How
many arenas are they at, and how many are going up? Count them up for us.
Okay, well, for the conference tournaments, we know we have the Orleans for 2 different leagues. Right. We have the Henderson Arena for the Big West. Right. We have, of course, Michelob Ultra, which is where the women's NBA team plays. We have MGM Grand Garden Arena, where they're going to play this new tournament called the Crown Tournament. Uh-huh. You have, of course, T-Mobile, the big one. Right. That's for the the most expensive one to rent. Those are probably the main ones in college hoops, but there are others. We've done games at the Sandpoint before. I worked with Santa Clara here locally in the Bay Area. We played a game. We had them play a game there one year, and we constantly tweak that. And then they're building. My understanding from being down there last week is they're building 1 or 2 others. I'm blanking on exactly where they're going to be, but and there's even more beyond that. So we're going to get to a point where every resort has an arena. The Mandalay Bay has a basically like a giant ballroom, but they use it for the G League showcase during the holidays, and that's on TV for 4 days. So you can pretty much use a lot of those properties to do games if you really needed to.
Excellent. All right, Rocco, thank you. We appreciate it.
You betcha. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
All right, when we come back, the Aggies and the Cougars, their Wednesday press conferences in advance of their Thursday NCAA tournament openers. That's next. Stay with us. Good morning. DJ and PK proudly presented by our title sponsor, Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort. All right, it is time to hear from the Aggies head coach, Jerrod Calhoun, as he gets ready for the NCAA tournament opener with UCLA.
I think our team is extremely excited to be here. It's a lot of hard work making the NCAA tournament. We have 9 new players, so seeing these guys come together for one common goal Our motto in our program is we over me, and I think our kids have really, really done a great job of carrying that out throughout the year. So we're really excited to be here.
A reminder to media to please wait until the microphone comes your way before asking your question. Also, please identify yourself and your media outlet before asking your question each time. On the back on the left.
Ben Balch, Los Angeles Times. Coach Cronin talked about knowing you well. Can you talk about your relationship with him, how you got to know him, and how it's evolved over the years?
Yeah, we never worked together, but we kind of, came up under the same coach and Bob Huggins. We never crossed paths. Mick's path is very similar to mine. He started off as a high school assistant coach, worked in the video room at Cincinnati, and obviously has worked his way up to one of the elite coaches in the country. So I've had a great deal of respect for him, and he's just given me a lot of advice over the years, whether I was at the Division II level, Youngstown State, or currently at Utah State. So we joked probably about 10 days ago. We talked for close to an hour that night about his team, about my team, about the current landscape of college basketball, some of his beliefs, philosophies, and sure enough, here we are playing each other in the first round. So we go way back.
Let's stay on this side on the left, third row.
Sean Harrison with the Herald-Journal. Coach, do you know Coach Cronin's team better than he knows your team, or who do you think knows the other team better?
I probably have watched more of his games than he has watched of ours. I watch about 3 or 4 teams, Sean, throughout the year. Obviously, you watch a lot of your friends' teams. I could tell you and recall a lot of plays of the Boston Celtics this year because Joe's obviously a good friend of mine. But UCLA is a team I've watched. My uncle passed away a few years ago, and he was the biggest Bruin fan ever. Can't tell you how much he loved the Bruins. So, to be playing these guys in this storied program and the history is pretty neat. So I've watched them, I'd say 7 to 8 times live throughout the year, and then obviously the last 2 days, ton of tape.
On the right, third row.
Jason Walker with Cash Valley Daily. I just want to ask about the tournament experience your team has. I mean, 3 of the guys that were up here have been in 1 or 2 games. Other players on the team have been in this tournament, won a game. Just how much of an impact can that have on the team getting here and just being prepared mentally as well as, on the court?
Jason, I think everything is experience. It's continuity. It's confidence. It's swagger, right? You got to have all that. So to have Mason and Ian and Fish and Carson and Jackson Smith, part of last year's team that beat TCU in the first round, and then obviously Auburn having that game experience against UConn is critical, right? Just being able to handle and manage, the hoopla of this, right? I've been pretty fortunate. I've been part of a couple Sweet 16s and a Final Four run. So I've seen this, as a guy that was part of a staff. It's different on the kids. To me, it's you got to block out the noise. You have to stay off social media. I think there's so many things out there that can distract you. Just stay focused. Have that belief that you can beat anybody, and anybody can, right? Tomorrow starts the greatest tournament that we have in the United States, right? It's the greatest tournament there is. I mean, there's going to be millions and millions of people watching. It's what makes college basketball so unique, but I do think having that experience will certainly help. UCLA was not in the tournament last year. They're hungry. I've read Mick's quotes. I know the hard work that he went through, the frustration of last year. They're a storied program. They're expected to make deep tournament runs, so they're going to have swagger. They're going to have confidence. There's no reason the Aggies can't as well.
Let's go back here on the left.
Ben Balch, Los Angeles Times. UCLA is 9-0 this season when Adimar plays 15 or more minutes. Knowing that stat, are you hoping you can keep him to 14 minutes? And what's the best way to counteract somebody who's 7'3" at this level?
Yeah, I mean, he's massive. He's only going to get better. Tremendous young talent. I think one of the most, talented young players in college basketball. You can see when he gets going in a game, he gets that swagger and he gets that confidence. It's a lot of times it's easy baskets. He's one of the best lob threats we have in college basketball. Mick does a tremendous job of putting him in Spain actions, high pick and rolls. So, your ball screen defense against him has to be really good. You got to do a tremendous job job of playing physical, because if he catches the ball on the block, you have no shot. Right, so you got to play physical against him. He's certainly one of those guys on their roster that nobody has that, right? Nobody has that height in today's game. You know, we saw it last year with Zach Edey. We saw it firsthand as a program, so we're certainly aware of him.
On the right, third row.
Gary Graves, Associated Press. Coach, you've been able to maintain the program's postseason continuity. I guess 3 years running with 3 different coaches. When you kind of look back on your arrival, how do you think you were able to kind of change your approach to coaching, especially with the transfer portal and other things like NIL?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think certainly college basketball has changed. You have to have a very, very good plan. You have to have partnership. I was very fortunate to get the Utah State job, right? Diana Sabo, took a gamble on a coach that, really had no ties to the West Coast, right? I think so much nowadays, you don't have to have ties to certain areas. I think if you can relate to the players, you can be there for them, you can hear their story, you have a system that works inside that league. Every job is different. You have to have a strategic plan. We wanted to be different. We wanted to play fast. We wanted to play a lot of guys. Our NIL, we had an event the other night. We raised $1 million in one night. Last year, we didn't have that for this year's roster. We didn't have that for the entire roster. Right, so I think that shows the commitment from our university, that shows you the commitment from Cache Valley. The awareness is very real, and I think kids like playing in our system. We give them a lot of freedom. If you're open, our whole system is find, create, and keep advantages, right? We want to be disruptive defensively, but we want our guys to have great confidence on the offensive end. We're one of the best passing teams in the country. We're one of the most efficient teams. We take a lot of pride in that, making the right play. Tomorrow's matchup will be all about ball security. They're going to come after us in the half court, full court. We want the game, to play fast. We want to open this game up. We want to see if we can get up and down with them.
Third row here on the right.
Jason Walker with Cache Valley Daily. What can you say about the health of the team? I know Carson and Ian were both kind of banged up after the conference tournament. What has their status been like this week through the practicing and getting ready for this week? Yeah, Jace, Carson got a shot 2 days ago, did not practice yesterday. He's feeling really good, so he'll practice today. Ian is, progressing pretty nicely. Part of having great seasons, you got to have some luck, right? And luck is a big part of it. We've got a tremendous training staff. I think Brandon Buskey does as good a job as any strength coach in the country. I think our doctors, Dr. Pickett, I think has done a tremendous job. He's really invested in our program. And I think Brett Ritter is maybe one of the best trainers I've ever been around. He spends a ton of time with our guys, a lot of countless hours. Guys do a tremendous job of taking care of their bodies. So I feel pretty good, Jason, about where we're at health-wise.
Back row on the right.
Jeff Hunter with the Desert News. Coach, could you just talk a little bit about what this means to you personally, being here for the first time as a head coach and also playing a storied program like UCLA at a place like Rupp Arena?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be prepared for every day. We've really went at this thing for a long time. I've been a head coach for 13 years. You put a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice on your family, a lot of recruiting trips, a lot of individual workouts, a lot of skill instruction, a lot of meetings. There's a ton that goes into college basketball, especially with the portal and NIL. It's really, we'll have a few weeks in May to kind of catch our breath. We'll have a few weeks in August. So probably about a month total is all you get, in this sport. So to me, it's about living in the moment, being present. I've shut down social media months ago. I don't take a ton of calls. I'll talk to a few coaches. I just really, really want to pour everything into our guys every day, and we've done that. So personally, it's not about the coach. It's about the players. We've got 3 seniors. This is their last go. I want to do everything I can in my power to put them in a good position to go make plays and be confident. We owe it to those guys. And I think, our mindset mindset right now is pretty good. You know, the last 2 weeks we haven't played great basketball. You got to call it like it is. But it's your full body of work. You know, our resume was really, really good. You know, we ended up getting the highest seed in the Mountain West along with New Mexico. So we've played good teams. You know, UCLA is a great team, but we've played St. Mary's. We've played Iowa. We've played San Diego State. We've played Boise, New Mexico. You know, we've played really, really good basketball teams to prepare us for this moment. So I tell our guys, play green, right? Next play mentality, play connected, and put the team over yourself.
Third row here on the left.
Sean Harrison with the Herald-Journal. Mason was just telling us about the depth. Anybody can go off. Could you expound a little bit about the depth? That's been a big part of this team is different guys, different nights playing well.
Yeah, I mean, it really starts with Ian and Mason buying into that philosophy. You know, every coach has a different style. You know, some coaches play slow, some play fast, some play short bench, some play man zone. You know, I think every team you have is going to be a little bit different. When we started constructing this roster, one thing we soon realized is we're going to be pretty versatile. Our guards are going to be very, very versatile. We're going to beat teams with speed. We're going to be able to play a lot of guys. You know, we certainly did not think Jordy Barnes, he and I laugh about this all the time, would be in our top 10. He closed games out at St. Mary's, at Iowa, at San Diego State. So he's a guy that's outperformed any of our expectations, you know. So we were looking at about a 9 or 10 man rotation, and now we're up to 10 or 11. So we're going to sub early and often tomorrow. We're going to switch our defenses up. We're going to play fast. We're going to play slow. We have the ability to play a lot of different ways. Sometimes you got to adjust to the way the game's being played. But I love our depth, and I love that the kids bought into that. You know, in today's environment, it's very, very hard to get guys to sacrifice. And when you got a guy like Mason Falslev that's the ultimate competitor, he really believes in that, it's easier for the other guys to follow it.
One last question, back row on the right.
Coach Scott Jerrod with KSL Sports. You mentioned Coach Hout, you brought him on because his defense was such a nightmare to prepare for. If you have not seen this zone, if you haven't prepared for it, how difficult is it in the span of 4 days to try to prepare for it and simulate it in practice and get ready for it?
Well, if there's one coach that can prepare for it, it's Coach Cronin. He actually played it. This originated from Ralph Willard, which worked for Rick Pitino, which Mick worked for Rick Pitino. So there's a lot of things that Mick understands about it. There's things we can do throughout the game to adjust, to try to make it difficult on them. But he played this at Cincinnati. So I think on a one-day prep, it's very difficult. I think obviously UCLA has known for a while they're playing us. He knows the zone. What he decides to run against it, I don't know. Sometimes teams run their man stuff. Sometimes teams run their zone stuff. But there's also things, Scotty, we can do to adjust throughout the game. One thing we have to do, whether you're playing man or zone, is guard the ball. We've done a really, really poor job of that lately. It doesn't matter what defense you play. If you don't guard the ball, it's not very good. It's just like football. If you don't tackle, you're not very good. So the basics are really important to this defense. And I think it could be definitely a challenge for teams. We'll have to see how it plays out tomorrow.
There's Jerrod Calhoun. The Aggies play tonight about 7:30. You'll hear the game on 1280 The Zone. Scotty G will be on the call. All right. When we come back, the Cougars prep for their game. They're playing this afternoon, and we will get to that and hear from the Cougars. Kevin Young next. Stay with us. Good morning, DJ and PK. Reminder, you can join the Zone live today at the JCW's Watch Party in Harriman from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Stop by and get a juicy burger, thick shake, and watch some games. Mention the Zone at the register and get 10% off your order during the event. That's JCW's at 5251 Anthem Park Boulevard in Harriman. All right, time now to hear from the Cougars. Richie Saunders, Trevin Knell, and Mawot Mag at the podium at the NCAA tournament.
Trevin and Richie, what do you guys take from last year's NCAA tournament game, and how is that serving to motivate and drive you guys this year?
Definitely a lot of us on the team, it was our first time in this, with this opportunity, and we got freaking smacked. And, take a few key things right there is we got to come out and be the aggressor and we've been around the block now, it feels like, as a team, and a lot of guys have been here in this spot before, and just with having all the confidence in the world and all the focus of just getting the job done and being the tougher team. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, I'll just double down. We're excited. We're excited to be here. I feel like we're battle tested, so I think that's kind of the difference. Play our brand of basketball. I think that's something that we really got to double down on going into this game.
Other questions? We're here.
Mo, how much growing up in Australia? How much did you follow, March Madness, and what was your experience like at Rutgers playing in March Madness?
Well, going back in Australia, I was a young kid. I started playing when I was 12, but I was always a kid that was watching it on TV. At first, I didn't know what it was because I wasn't very familiar. But as I got to, I grew. Learning about the game of basketball, I kind of knew what it was and how big it was. And in regards to my time at Rutgers was, tremendous. I went there as a little boy, and then I left as a grown man. So I learned a lot, played a lot of games over there, and just great overall experience.
Other questions? Here we go.
Yeah, I don't know how much you guys hear all the noise surrounding your guys' matchup, but a lot of people picking the underdog against you guys. You guys are battle tested all year. Do you hear that noise, and does it affect how you guys prepare for the game at all?
It should have no effect on us. We're here to play basketball and play our basketball.
Anything else? Go ahead.
Richie, obviously everyone's making a big deal that your great-grandfather invented tater tots. How has that little nugget of information kind of resonated in the Saunders household?
It's hilarious. I don't know where that came out of. It just came out of nowhere. But yeah, my grandpa founded Ore-Ida. The great-grandpa founded Ore-Ida, which founded the tater tot, and it was hilarious how. I don't even know how it got started. Maybe Tyson knows, but I don't know where it came out, but we've had a lot of laughs and just in our house and had a lot of tater tots.
Like that in the middle, guys.
Jackson Payne, Deseret News. Trevin, you're a super senior. This is your last ride in college basketball. You've been on a lot of BYU teams over the past few years. In your opinion, what makes this team this year different from the rest that you've played on?
Yeah, it was super interesting. I was telling some of my teammates and the coaches that once our name popped up on March Madness, I was excited. I feel like it was such a different feeling than previous years. Like I said, I think we're battle tested. I'm super proud of our team, how the season started to where we are now. I feel like we're one of the hottest teams in the country. We're playing our brand of basketball. We're trusting each other and trusting God and just doing our thing. And so I think it's super fun to be able to play that way, and so we're super excited for our matchup against VCU on Thursday.
Greg Wrubell, BYU Sports Network. For any of you guys, how much has playing a pretty pressure-heavy group of teams, especially down the stretch, helped to face a team that does hang its hat on the defensive end and likes to press as well?
Go, Mo.
I feel like, you said one more time, please.
Just how much is playing a lot of pressure-heavy teams, especially late in the year, maybe prepped you for a team like VCU?
I feel like it's very great, I feel like, you play to win, and also playing great teams down the stretch towards the season is what you want. I feel like every team in March Madness is going to be a good team, no matter what seed they are. So I feel like we're battle tested, and I feel like it's actually great. I'd rather play them early rather than late. So I feel like it's a great experience for everybody.
Right there.
Luke Evans, Denver Post. Trevin, you mentioned, one of the hottest teams in the country. You guys won a huge win streak before Houston. Was there a turning point, in the season where you feel like things really clicked for you guys, or a moment or anything where you felt kind of a shift there?
Yeah, I would say when we played at UCF, we kind of, UCF's another pressure-heavy team. They're really athletic, and we kind of just we turned the ball over a little bit in the first half. Coach Young really challenged us going into the second half, and I think that's when our momentum kind of shifted. That's when our mindset kind of shifted of, hey, we got to play our brand of basketball, but we have to be the tougher team. We can't let guys, knock us over. We have to be the first team that he kind of punches. So I think that was kind of the biggest shift. And then obviously the one at West Virginia was huge.
Follow right back on that. Does that experience, thinking back again, facing another kind of pressure-heavy team going into this matchup, do you think back to that UCF game and get a little bit of confidence knowing that that's kind of where that shifted for you guys playing a similar sort of style?
Yeah, I feel like every Big 12 team is, pressure heavy. Like we played Houston, we played Cincinnati, like West Virginia. All these teams are really pressure heavy. They rebound really well. I think VCU hangs their hat on the offensive rebounding side of the ball. So I feel like we're, again, battle tested, and we have, resumes, we have statement wins that can help us, challenge VCU in a different way. So I think it's going to be a great matchup, and I'm excited to play a team that's, at the caliber as VCU is.
Over to your left, guys.
Mark, it was San Diego Union Tribune. For Trevin and Richie, you've been there for a while. How excited were you when you realized you were going to be playing at elevation against a bunch of teams that are not from elevation, knowing what kind of advantage it's been for you all season? I think it's 17-3 this year at elevation and 7-6 at sea level.
Knock on wood. Yeah, I think the elevation was huge. I think we were really excited. It's closer to home. We're hoping to get, a lot of Cougar fans out there. But yeah, I think it was huge for us.
I don't really have much else to add other than we're happy that we were close to home. There's going to be a lot of blue in the stands.
Richie, you guys have been a really confident team, especially the latter half of the season. Did the loss to Houston and the way that game unfolded nick your confidence at all?
I hope not. I shouldn't have. Not for me personally, and I'm sure that's how it was for the guys. You take your losses, you learn, and you get back up. That's what we've done all season. 1-3, lose at TCU, same thing. Other stretch of losses, do the same thing. You have to figure out how to build yourself up and keep going on. Exactly what we did at West Virginia after a tough little stretch of losses, right? That's what we've done all season. And just because we lost that one, we learned. Gonna have to, and we're grateful for the opportunity to respond.
There are the players. Now here's BYU head coach Kevin Young.
Kevin, you have any fond memories of this building as an NBA coach with the Suns? You even remember what your record was in here?
Don't remember the record. I know the last go-around in the playoffs, they obviously got the best of us. But, yeah, I think the year we made the finals, we swept them in the playoffs. And so that's always been my fondest memory of playing it here. Also have nightmares trying to guard the Murray-Jokic two-man game, which is, I stand by, one of the hardest things to guard in all of basketball. So I'm glad we're not having to deal with that.
And then can you just assess your team's readiness level going into, obviously, the most important game of the season?
I'd say high. Interesting just talking with some of the guys that were in this very similar situation last year, just picking their brains on some of the things they learned and trying to get ahead of maybe some things that they felt like on a team and individual level were mistakes from last year. So picking their brains. But, I think I think that's what's great about the Big 12. You go through a lot of, battles throughout the course of the regular season, even the postseason. So I think our guys are ready. We have a mature group and definitely relying on their experience as well.
Right there.
Greg Wrubell, BYU Sports Network. Just first impressions of taking a building into a tournament venue, being on the podium with your name, seeing the logos, and having this experience for the first time.
It reminds me of, I was in the background, obviously, but it's not like the NBA playoffs. It's more like the NBA finals. That's just what it feels like, where everything is amped up. There's way more media. So, I'm big on reference points, both with our team and even for me as I've gone throughout my career. So that's kind of what it feels like. But it's exciting, honestly. Like, this is something that, as a kid, was a huge fan of this tournament. And I think I've made this comment before, but every year in the NBA, every March would roll around and you're watching this stuff from afar, and always like, man, I bet it's just so fun to coach in March Madness. And so here we are. So it's a little bit of a surreal moment, to be honest with you, but I'm just really excited for our players to be able to experience this with the group of guys that we have.
Right there.
Luke Evans, Denver Post. Kevin, I'm sure you've talked about this at length, but you mentioned trying to guard the Murray Jokic pick and roll. What kind of stylistic differences have you seen and adapted to in terms of bringing your knowledge of the NBA game to college this year? And is there any aspect of preparing for Game 5, Game 6, Game 7 from the NBA that you can kind of take and apply to technically one-game series kind of in preparing for March Madness?
Yeah, I think just in general, like the NBA and college thing, it's more physical. There's a lot more contact is allowed in college. That was a huge adjustment for me. I was kind of crying about it a lot early on in the year. Then I just had to embrace it and just figure out ways around it. I think the spacing is a lot different in college and in the NBA. And then to your second part of that question, one thing that I always, when I went back and every year would go back and read my notes for my playoff prep in the NBA, it was, as a coach, you get caught up in that, how are we going to guard Murray and Jokic and all these different schemes and stuff like that. But year after year, it came back to, rebounding. It came back to making quick decisions with the ball, and it came back to playing together, and that's stuff that definitely can rely on some of those lessons in this type of environment.
Jackson Payne, Deseret News. Coach, what are your thoughts on this VCU team as you scouted them throughout the week?
Really impressive. Coach Odom does a really good job with their group. I think they're a lot of experience across the board. They got a guy that they can trust in Shoga that can make plays when they need him and just kind of be the quarterback of their team. He's unique because of his size. He's able to get to his spots. He never really gets sped up. So been impressed with him on the tape. I think they have a very clear identity of how they want to play. They want to pick you up. They want to get after you. They want to turn you over. They want an offensive rebound. They got multiple guys that hit the glass. So for me, they have a clear style of play and things that, for us, ironically, is a lot of the things that we've talked about against some of the better teams in our league in the Big 12 that have a lot of similarities. So going back to the reference points and so forth, being able to reference, at Iowa State or being able to reference, at Arizona or whatever the case may be, I do see some similarities with this club. But it's a really good team, and they're super well coached, and it's going to be a tall task for us.
Over here.
Mark Ziegler, San Diego Union Tribune. I think you're 17-3 this year at elevation, and you're 7-6 at sea level or close to sea level. How much of an advantage is it for you guys to be sent to an elevation venue for these games versus teams that are not from elevation?
Definitely, I think it's more of an advantage than a disadvantage for sure. I mean, for us, going back to VCU style, I think we have a pretty distinct style how we want to play as well. I don't think it's a secret. We want to get out and run, just stylistically, and then you tack on the elevation to that as well. I think that's definitely an advantage for us. But honestly, when I was in the NBA, we would come to here, we go to Utah, and everybody would make a thing of it. And I'm like, okay, but after about the first. Once you catch your breath, I think that stuff goes out the window personally. I don't think the players overthink man, we're at a mile high, whatever, we're going to lose the game. So I just think that it's a lot of noise, to be honest with you, especially after that first kind of wave and they get out of their system.
Anything else? Over here.
One, I'm just following up on before about the differences with the NBA and college games. Why do you think the college game has not evolved into what the NBA game has? Is it just that there aren't as many good three-point shooters, or why isn't the spacing the same and the reliance on the three the same as it is in the NBA?
We could be here for hours answering that question, but I think there's a lot of things. I think the rules, number one, the defensive rules as it relates to the first of all, the lane's way bigger in the NBA. You can't park anybody in there, right? So just on that alone, it's going to give you more open lane. Then you park shooters around that type of spacing. Where in the NBA, most teams are playing with four guys who can all shoot from three, some five. In college, not every team is constructed that way. So I do believe it's a roster construction thing. I don't think every team talks about shot diet and shot profile the way that they do in the NBA. There's a lot more I don't know what the numbers say, but I would venture to guess there's a lot more, long twos that are shot in the college game versus the NBA. I also think that, like I said, the way that the game is officiated, it's harder to create advantages in college than it is in the NBA. One, because it's how it's officiated, but two, because of the skill level. In the NBA, respectfully, a lot of coaches look like geniuses because you draw up a play and a guy like Kevin Durant can come off a shot. No matter how he's guarded, he's probably going to make it. You know what I mean? In the college world, you're not afforded that luxury. So there is a talent discrepancy that is part of it. But I think more than anything, it's just I think it's the rules and it's how rosters are constructed. And I think I'm seeing it more and more. I think we're seeing it more and more. More college teams are getting more constructed like NBA teams, but I think it'll trend that way. But, we'll kind of see how things evolve.
Anything else? Okay. One more.
Come on, Jackson. Don't be shy, dude.
Last question.
Mawot Mag's had a really interesting year, starting as a role player, getting limited minutes, entering the starting lineup. And it feels like as he's kind of taken on a bigger role as a starter, your season has kind of turned around and you guys have caught fire, really. So talk about the value that Mawot brings to this team and what you've seen from him in this year. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just a real lesson about just how valuable having guys that kind of been through the fire are. I mean, his personal case, he wasn't healthy when we first got him. It took him a minute to get his sea legs under him, but having a guy that can, just his assignment every night is to guard the other team's best player. That's freed us up, I think, in terms of how we sub our group. It's allowed us to go a little bit deeper, which I think our depth has really been something that's been a huge benefit for our team, and he's been a big part of that. So there's a large trickle-down effect by putting him in the starting lineup, and it kind of has sort of gave everybody else a bit of a placeholder, and it's gave us a lot more experience and toughness on the defensive end.
There are the Cougars in advance of the NCAA tournament. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.